teaching a Norwegian class, and there was a Norwegian put his hand up and said, "What do you mean this thou?" So I wrote out on the blackboard 1,000, and about that long, you know. And I said, over here in Canada we're lazy, so we leave off the sand. So I rubbed it off and that left thou. He said, "Oh, you mean 2,000. Did I ever tell you that story before? Yeah, I said 60,000 on the top, 40,000 on the side, and 20,000 on the bottom. Yeah. And I used to tell another story. There was a selenium rectifier. It's what converts DC to AC and has a very high voltage. It was so high that it was lethal, and it was what gave the ignition to the engine. There was 3 igniter plugs, they called them. There was one in number 5, one in number 3, and one in number 6, I think, at the bottom. And then they were interconnected. There was flame tubes, the flame tubes, but there was interconnectors between the combustion chambers, and the gases then would spread around them. And this selenium rectifier was lethal up to 3 minutes after it had been ignited. You know. And so we had to impress on them that they were not to touch any of that. The mechanics were not to touch any of that system until at least 3 minutes after. And to impress them on it, I told them the story about Johnny, who was late for school. And his teacher said, "Johnny, how come you're late for school?" And he said, "Well, I saw a fella get hit in the ass with a truck." She said, "Johnny, you mean rectum." He said, "Rectum, hell, it killed him." That's the story I used to tell him. But I think that I've told you enough for one night, because we're all going to sleep, and it's time. It's what, 11:30, so we better wrap it up. And,
well, you can.
Yeah. When my mother saw me, she was taken to the hospital. You know, I missed part of it, didn't I?
Yeah.
We weren't very rich, so I was born at home. And when my mother saw me, she was taken to the hospital. Yeah. What on earth does that do, Don?
This?
Yeah.
That's on television. I can see it.
Oh. Well,
Cute baby.
you know, I guess we were, I said we would, and I told you enough, and then I was in, it was SSTS in Portage la Prairie, wasn't it? And I think I missed a whole lot of, I jumped around quite a bit, I think. Anyway, it was in Portage la Prairie that I met your mum. Or did I tell you that on that tape too? Huh?
A little bit.
We're going out here. Who's knocking? In your mouth. Who's knocking? Wait.
I don't know where it started.
I didn't hear anyone, sweetheart.
Really?
Maybe your mum was in the
We went
room.
from I don't know, did I tell you about training and my training? And yeah, I did it in school. And then did I tell you about, that was in Vancouver. And I went to St. Thomas, so yes, I told you about St. Thomas. And then from St. Thomas went to Portage la Prairie, and I met Mother.
What is in your bite ear? What is by your
Did
ear?
I tell you about Mother? In Portage la Prairie.
That round wheel.
In that last
Yeah.
thing there. Yeah, I think I did, didn't I? Didn't I tell you about the training going on our honeymoon to Vancouver? And and we were in Portage, back to McDonald, Manitoba, and we were there, what, how long were we in Manitoba? We went to, we were married, and
6
we
months.
transferred out to
November.
6 months. Then we went to Vancouver, and we were in Vancouver for 6.5 years.
Great.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I told you in that last one or not about, that's where Wes and Jim and Myrna were born in Vancouver. Did I tell you that? Oh. Well, let's see now. We went to Vancouver,
And you went up north from Vancouver and you were on search and rescue in Vancouver?
Yeah, I was on search and rescue.
And
I was a famous hero in Vancouver's on search and rescue.
Well, tell us that story. We never heard that story.
Well, there was a couple lost. Their name was Bill Grant and Sheila Cure. And Sheila was from here, in Cardston. Her folks
Oh, yeah.
you still
lived
are?
here. No, they don't. They did.
Oh, yeah, right.
Lived here till he died.
Yeah. But she was a nurse in Vancouver. And Bill Grant, I think he was with the City Hall or something like that, wasn't he?
Well, he had a private plane
Yeah,
anyway.
he had a private plane, and he flew her back home here to Cardston to visit her folks. And then on the way back, they had to be back, well, I guess the next day sort of thing. And Bill Grant was told not to take off because the weather was bad over the mountains. But I guess for them having to be back, he was going to go anyway, so he went. And around Hope in the Fraser Valley, went into the side of a mountain. Apparently it was clouded over and the clouds cleared, and the peak of this mountain, Mount Cheam was the name of it. He moved up and he pulled up on the stick to try and get up over it, and stalled and mushed into it. I guess if he had to, he would have fallen right into it, you know, and they would have smashed. But when I'm seeing it and him pulling up to try and get over it, they just stalled and mushed it, and so they were all right that way. But we looked for them for, I think it was 10 days before. There was a thing there too that might be interesting to tell, and that was that Howard Lane was stationed in Vancouver at the same time. And there was a fellow by the name of Livingston. Do you remember his first name? Yeah, Livingston.
Not really.
Yeah. I can't think of his first name, Livingston anyway. But one of these, well actually it was the search when we found them. I was on a Lancaster. Howard Lane was on the Lancaster too. I was engineer on the Lancaster, and Howard Lane was on as a spotter. And when they found out that we were both on that Lancaster, they said, we're not going to have two Mormons on one aircraft. We're going to have one on this one, and you will go over and take over the Canso. And it was the Livingston fellow was supposed to be on the Canso, but he was late. I don't know how come he was late, but he was late. And so I had got the Lancaster started, and they took me off of it and put me on this Canso. And we took off, and because we were late, the Canso was late. The rest of the aircraft got away all right, but because the Canso was late, they redirected us to an area that had already been covered. But it was quite bad weather when it hadn't been covered, and so we went out to this area and covered it again. And it was while we were on that. Now I had started out up in the tower or in the engineer's position. I'd started the aircraft and taxied out and flown out and was up in the tower, I don't know, I guess it must have been an hour or more. And we had another engineer on board, and we traded off. So this fellow come up and took over my position, and I went back to the back. And on a Canso, there's big blisters on either side. And these was what we were watching out of. Well, I got the binoculars, and on a search, we always started at the bottom of a mountain and went up to the top, and then we'd go over and then come down, and we'd just work along a mountain up and down like that all the way. Well, I think I made 3 passes. I went up the mountain and down and up, and there they were, sitting right there. The aircraft was sitting right there in front of me. Man, I had no any communication with the pilot, with
earphones or been able to talk to them, so I dropped the binoculars and I ran up to the front of the aircraft and said I spotted them, I saw them. And by this time, of course, we'd gone quite a ways by. And so we circled back, and we circled around for quite a little while before we spotted them again. And then the pilot that I was with was green on cansos, and he was afraid to get down in close to the mountains because of updrafts and downdrafts. He didn't know how they would affect the aircraft. So we called another aircraft in with a more experienced pilot on board. And while we were waiting for this pilot to come in, we circled and just kept circling around. Well, the couple down below, that Bill Grant and Sheila Cure down below, heard the aircraft, of course. We couldn't see anything of them, but they built a fire, and the smoke come up, and then that spotted them. The other aircraft came in, and when he came in, he went just right straight down over the top of them and back up, you know, in the valley. And that let them know then that we knew that they were there and everything was all right. And so then we called in the Lancaster, and we had pararescue men on board. They jumped into the area. Well, they jumped in and got to the Bill and Sheila, and then they hiked out. I don't know how far. It seems to me it was around 10 miles they had to hike. And they had been in the bush 10 days and they had nothing to eat except one chocolate bar, and they were getting quite weak. Bill said that it took all his effort to get down to the creek and get water for them to come back up. And they got out to a lumber camp. And
Funny part of it was she washed her hair up there.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I do. She washed her hair in that soft mountain water made from snow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah?
Yeah. They started an avalanche, and they rode an avalanche down. The aircraft mushing in, I guess, shook it up enough that when they tried to go down, they started the snow to slide, and they slid along the top of the snow, getting down the side of the mountain. And they had a press conference at the airport, and I was introduced to them. And Sheila was a Mormon, and when I was introduced to her as leading aircraftsman Hillyer, and I leaned over and whispered into her ear, "It's Elder Hillyer." And she said, "I knew that our Heavenly Father was looking after us." And
you
got your picture in the paper? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right up. You even got a letter from the president of the mission.
yes, I remember
President
that
Fisher?
too, yeah.
Glenn Fisher.
Yeah. We had been taking pictures all across of the dew line. That was a defense line, a warning line, and we'd been away for a long time, and that's the time that we phoned from there. And that's right, it was Baffin now. I remember it comes back, and we phoned from there, and it went to Ottawa. And from Ottawa to Winnipeg, and that's where you were, wasn't it? Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're stationed in Winnipeg.
Or Prairie, one or the other.
Not online?
Hold on,
Winnipeg.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And we phoned from there, and that was quite a thing because it was by radio to Ottawa, and then from Ottawa to Winnipeg by ground.
In those days, it was something.
Yeah, not now, but it was then. I don't even know when that would be. Can you remember what date that would be?
Well, it would be in, let's see,
60
Don
to
was born in
64.
53, and then we were in Winnipeg till 69, or no.
64?
We went
or
to
65? 65? No, 64.
66 we went to Edmonton.
So it was
2 years at
64,
Rivers.
63 or 4, I guess.
Where was I before I got all the way off on this?
You were on Baffin Island making a phone call.
No, but I mean before that. We were in Vancouver.
Yeah.
No, yes, at this report of this search of Bill Grant and Sheila Cure. I've lost track of her. She used to be a nurse in Calgary, and I used to phone her every now and then when I went through Calgary and was staying overnight or something like that. I'd phone her, but I lost track of her altogether now.
Alice Smith was telling me about her the other day, or one time at work. She was her girlfriend.
Alice Smith.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
Alice. Alice was her girlfriend.
Did she know about the search then? You're going to break that picture. Well, then, let's see. Oh, one other thing I did in Seattle, Vancouver was in the band with Howard Lane. I played glockenspiel, and also played snare drum. I played the snare, or I guess I call it the snare drum, and then the tenor drum, and then the glockenspiel. We went on lots of parades, mostly for Armistice Day parades downtown and right down in Vancouver. Remember one time we'd been to the cenotaph and finished, and we were going back, and we were playing, and with the tenor drum I spun the drum sticks, you know, spin them around like this, and then bring them down on the, spin them around like this, spin them around like this. I cried, never did see it again. The string broke. And the cord broke on it. Did I tell you in that last one about being on a funeral parade in Vancouver the other night? How we shot this fellow and I got put on the coal pile for... Well, we're on a
Did you shoot him?
we were on this funeral. Oh, I don't know whether I told you. I told you. When we were training for it, you know, we have volleys of blank cartridges loaded, you see. And you bring your rifle up over your head and fire, and I couldn't get my blank cartridge in there fast enough on this one, so of course nobody would notice because it was all one big bang. And then we came to go through it again, and everybody was supposed to have been out of ammunition. And I forget the name of the warrant officer that was but I slipped this one in, you see, that I hadn't fired before, and bones or blank cartridges load and then fire, and there was nobody was expecting it to go off, and mine went off, bang, and the warrant officer said, "Who did that?" I said, "What was that?" Nobody would say a word. So unload. Up goes my cartridge, and oh, I got it in the neck for that too. On this one though,
It's a shame to admit that, you know.
we marked down Granville Street at the slow march, and carrying the casket, and we put it on the train. That was it, and right through the train depot, right out to the train in the slow march. I don't know whether you know what that is, but do you know what it is?
Oh yeah, we just put one.
Yeah, one foot slow, and then you put your toe out, and then the next one, and it was half the speed or less than what you would normally go. And really, it was quite eerie going through the depot with this step in the echo through the whole building, you know. Boom, 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 you know. Well, it was something. But coming back from that, some of the guys had not me. They hadn't fired their cartridges as well on that one. And we were coming back in the back end of the panel, and we let this guy out at Fraser and 45th. You remember that place, eh?
Mm-hmm.
45th and Fraser. And he ran across the street, and as he ran across the street and got the other side, the guy jumped out of the truck with his rifle with a blank in it and fired, you know. And the guy he fired up, fell down, dead. Oh man, there was 2 or 3 old women around there, and they saw what was happening. They just about had hysterics. And they phoned the commanding officer at the airport and told him what had happened, you see. When we got back to the airport, we went straight, come in the gate, they stopped us. And they took the whole rest of us in this panel. There would be maybe half a dozen or 10 of us in the back of this panel. They took us in, the commanding officer, he ordered to dress us up and down. He brought the living daylights out of us, and then he put us on the coal pile for 3 days. And we had to, after work, every day, we had to load a truckload of coal by shuttle and load that thing. And then they took it to the powerhouse. What a job that was.
I never did hear those two stories.
Not bad. That was sure funny.
Not
going.
Aren't you? You'd rather talk?
Yeah. We'll get a chance like this again for a long time.
It's 7:30.
Uncle Jane coming someday.
Let's see. Well, we'll stop then, I guess. They, I don't know what else to tell you about there. I was on flying boats training. I thought I told you this.
Mm-hmm. You need to pick yourself up and get into the 70s.
What your trips? When you went
From
to
Vancouver, we were
train
transferred
as a
to,
flight engineer, go
we were
from
transferred to Forest-la-Prairie, another town. In Forest-la-Prairie, I was,
to Claresholm and then Forest-la-Prairie.
Yeah, you went from Vancouver out.
oh yeah, that's right, we did. We went to Claresholm.
Yeah,
We were
Don
in
was
Claresholm for 2.5 years. And Don was born in Claresholm. In Claresholm, we were on Harvards. Did I tell you about how we worked on Harvards? And,
Yeah.
and how
All that.
I told you.
So it was all about T-33s.
Yeah, but I shouldn't have told you about T-33s because I didn't know anything about them until I got to Portage. So now we're back in Portage again.
Oh, you're on your way to Winnipeg.
While you were in Headingley,
And did I tell you that while I was in Forest-la-Prairie, I was in charge of the engine bay? And yeah, I did, didn't I? And how we went on, I was in charge of the engine bay
Yeah, and all the test flights.
and test flights. I told you about that. And how I used to do loops and rolls on and landed and all that. Okay.
and you were branch president there.
Yeah, that's something I didn't tell you though. That in the 6.5 years that I was there, I was the branch president for the Mormon church there. And I married 3 different couples, didn't I?
Yeah.
Let's see, there was a Tolly and
K-Bone.
Kay Bone and Joan. No, June.
June and K-Bone.
Oh, was that June? Or what about June's sister?
Well, you didn't marry them.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't. They were married when they came to Portage. You buried their baby.
And maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
I married 3
Well,
though.
you did. That fellow that was the engine, that was the
Flight engineer.
on the plane. The first time I went on a plane, he was the
He was not the flight engineer. He was the load master.
load master. Yeah. First time I was on a plane, the pilot was a Mormon, and so was the load master.
That was quite a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
First time she ever went up, and it wasn't arranged that way. It was just an aircraft that was going through, and the crew, well, you'd probably know the pilot. He's Harker.
Bill Harker.
Bill Harker from is he from McGrath or Raymond? I think McGrath.
Yeah,
Do you
McGrath.
trust him anymore?
Well, I don't know. I didn't feel bad about going on, except that, you know, in order to see out, you had to stand up and look out these little round windows.
What, in a dash?
No,
No, it was a boxcar.
boxcar. C119 boxcar.
We have movies of that, too. It's on movies.
Yeah, too.
Yeah.
That's been, mine's been, you know, fixing Jim's projector for him. He said that we would be able to use it anytime.
Oh,
The other day, fixed his.
movie projector?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can use
You
it
can use
anytime.
yours anytime you want. A movie projector?
Yeah. Well, no, his wasn't a movie projector. His was a slide.
We've got a slide projector.
Oh, yeah, but this one is so much better. Anyway, he
What
said,
pictures we've got.
now where did we get to, Don?
We went to Winnipeg.
Well, from Port of Prairie then, I remustered from narrow engine mechanic to flight engineer. I had to go on training to Ottawa. And I was on training in Ottawa for 4 months on Lancasters with a guy named Sid Skinner. Yeah. Then after that we came back to Winnipeg and we were on search and rescue in Winnipeg. So I've been on that before and it was quite... We were on that search for... What the heck was his name, right? The guy that was out in the wilderness for 52 days with the guy. Flores, yeah. Flores, he was a member of the church too.
But she was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, 52 days and she lost 52 pounds.
Yeah, and she lost her toes too.
Yeah, she lost her toes.
Her toes. That was a funny thing, you know. Every time I went out on that trip, I was in charge of ground crew, and I could have gone flying too. And every time I went out to the airport, I had this feeling inside that I should go, you know. And I never did go. Another thing, I became one of the 3 Nephites on that trip. Did I tell you about that? There's of course, everywhere I went, I always looked to see if I could find the church. And I found this one fella in the boiler room who was a member, but he wasn't a member in good standing, and he admitted it as well. He said there also was a dentist in town that was a Mormon, but he said he wasn't a very good Mormon either. He didn't keep the word of wisdom and things of that sort.
What town?
Prince George. Yeah. And I've been out this one morning, got the aircraft all the way, and the Army captain, we stayed in the Army barracks there for billeting, and the Army captain was bringing me back into town, and he had to go to the bank, and it wasn't quite 10 o'clock, so the bank wasn't open. He said,
Don't waste them.
let's go in to the cafe here and have a cup of coffee and whatnot, you know. And that'll give me waiting for the bank. Well, he had his coffee and I had my Pioneer, or not Pioneer, it was, what was it at that? Postum, yeah. And I asked them for a cup of Postum. And as we were having this, the dentist went by the window. And the Army captain said, oh, that's so-and-so, the dentist. And if I get talking to him, I'll be here all day because he just talked your leg off. So let's get out of here before he comes in. So he went to pay the bill, and while I was waiting, this guy came in, sat down, and ordered a cup of coffee and lit up a cigarette. And he was with a friend, you know. Well, he'd never seen me before in his life, and I'd never seen him before in his life. And I walked up to him and called him by name and said, you're a Mormon, aren't you? Boy, you ought to seen the look on his face. His chin just dropped. He looked up, he was mouth wide open and his eyes, and I just turned around and walked away. The look on his face was, man, that must be one of the 3 Nephites. Did I ever tell you that one? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's that one?
Yeah. No. Where are we now? We're in Winnipeg on search and rescue. Well, I don't know what I can tell you about that. We flew to a search one time. There was a big parade coming on, and we didn't want to go on this parade. So we cooked up some deal to go out to BC somewhere. I think it was Prince George again. And we had a new tank put in the Lancaster on the wing. And it wasn't really quite right. And we knew this, but we went anyway. And the darn thing developed a gas leak. And we went out on this thing to get away from this parade, and on the way back we were losing gas really fast. And coming to